What is going on, everyone? Just finished a workout here. First time going to the gym in over, 6 weeks, because I have a home gym. Oh, that is cleaner and I think nicer. And you don't have to wait for any equipment, except when my wife works out, and I have to wait for her sometimes. So I was reminiscing this weekend, because this weekend, what I've been doing is I'm doing something I've been wanting to do for a long time. So everyone that's followed our stuff for any period of time, Move Well University members / Move Now, still trying to get used to that name change. I like Move Well better, but anyway, we had to change it. It's a different story. But those that have followed for some time, those who are brand new, either way, something I've been working on, which made me think about talking about this topic of who used to practice like this, who still practices like this. Don't worry, you don't need to call yourself out, but you might want to listen to this. Let me tell you the backstory, or at least what I was working on this weekend. It'll give you some context as to why I'm making this little video, this little talk or podcast, or however you're listening to this. So this weekend I'm mapping out something I've wanted to do for a long time, which is we have a program where we help chiropractors add functional movement, integrate it into their chiropractic practice to improve patient outcomes, to be more significant in your community, to be literally the leader in your community, like the absolute best clinician in your community that is sought out, okay, keeping your patients engaged and also getting paid for it, which is also a bonus. That's what we do, all right? And so we've built this program with all the different secrets and tips and the way that we practice. And believe me, there was lots of failures and lots of trial and errors on our part. And then we have a refined product, and we share that. We share the forms, the paperwork, the systems, the communication, everything. We have a day 1 through day 5 process that we take our patients through, because there are so many moving parts clinically. But when you follow that process, it sets the patient up for success for their 12 weeks of corrective care. Now, that's also something else that I wanted to mention. And I'm not trying to be a hater, but I was watching some of the different YouTube chiropractors that are, I'm just going to draw the line in the sand. The pathetic YouTube chiropractors that tarnish our chiropractic reputation. You know who they are. The ones that do disgusting, gross manipulation, that just talk and spew diarrhea out of their mouth as they're trying to talk through what they're doing with the patient. Maybe fooling the patient, maybe lying to themselves, fooling themselves. Definitely not fooling a knowledgeable chiropractor or clinician who's watching it. And I was watching it, and this one guy who has like millions and millions of views, a couple 100,000 subscribers, which is a lot on YouTube, he says he does corrective care. He's a corrective care chiropractor. I don't know about all you guys and gals out there, but that really bothers me when people say they're a corrective care chiropractor when I see what they do. They are just doing gross manipulation. I've watched a couple of their YouTube videos do the same exact thing on every single patient. Their analysis and assessment is completely non-evidence-based, and they call themselves a corrective care chiropractor. Well, what is a corrective care chiropractor? Someone that has objective, measurable outcomes. Now, this ties into the topic at hand. Who here, by a show of hands, used to practice in such a way where you adjusted your patient? Maybe you took x-rays in the beginning. You probably didn't take comparative x-rays. You didn't really repeat any of the objective findings that you found initially to justify care, or your objective outcomes in the beginning were so minuscule and insignificant that there was no point of repeating them. Who used to practice like that? So I'm raising my hand, because even though I think of myself as a really skilled practitioner straight out of school doing Gonstead, looking back, our exam and the stuff that we did and how we documented it and how we could, show a track record over time, we didn't have it. We didn't have those measurable outcomes. So if an insurance company, if we're working with health insurance, ever question us, you get chewed apart. And so what was I taught to do by my mentors early on? Don't waste your time even fighting with them, because why? Because we didn't have the documentation, we didn't have the objective stuff to back it up. So instead it was, they don't understand what we do, they don't get it, oh, damn insurance companies, whatever. Well, it goes a little bit beyond insurance companies, because maybe you're a chiropractor watching this and you don't bill health insurance, and you go, well, I don't have to worry about that. Thank goodness. Wrong. I was actually an expert witness on a case of another chiropractor who was getting sued who didn't take health insurance, but guess what? He saw a guy and the guy sued him. So all of his notes were requested. His notes were awful. They didn't have any clear, objective, comparative analysis or anything documented, no re-examination that was worth a damn nothing. And I had to back him up. And so the way I didn't have to back him up. I had to say my opinion. And in my opinion, I didn't think that he caused the problem that the guy was suing him for. The guy was suing him for a herniated disc in his neck. However, if the guy's notes or objective findings were like anything significant, it would have made it so much easier. It would have saved him so much hassle, and he wouldn't look incompetent. I mean, he looked really dumb because of how bad his notes were. So it doesn't matter if you do insurance or self-pay or prepay or whatever you do as a chiropractor. If you practice in the United States of America, you have to have a certain level of documentation, and you should have a certain level of objective measures, because, I don't know, maybe as a clinician, it's satisfying for you to see that objectively you're helping your patient improve more than them just saying my symptoms went away instead of just being an expensive aspirin. So anyway, how I used to practice for several years, I didn't have good objective comparative data. And for a while, I just became complacent and I didn't really care about it. And I lied to myself and said, well, it doesn't matter. You know, the insurance companies don't get it, or the world doesn't get it, or it's not the medical model, it's the chiropractic model. And so because of that, we don't have to, you know, try to appease anyone. Well, the fact of the matter is, I wasn't satisfied internally as a chiropractor, and I was on cruise control. I felt like what I did, I learned everything there was to learn, and I was done. And this was like maybe 6-7 years into practice. And I know there's some chiropractors watching this or listening to this on a replay or on a podcast or whatever who feel like this as well. You're maybe 6 years, 7 years out of school in practice, and you feel like you're on cruise control. You've been to a bunch of seminars. It's not really clear how to put those techniques in practice because, you know, you don't have time to do it. You're not getting paid for it anyway. It doesn't make sense to do it. It just makes more sense to adjust more people per hour because that's the best business model. So what do? You take all the cool clinical stuff that you learn on top of the adjustment. Now, don't get me wrong. The adjustment is the center of what we do. The more specific, the better, in my opinion. But then all these other things that you enjoy doing, that you know is helping your patient, that you know is speeding up the results, you don't do because you're not getting paid for it. You don't have a system to be able to put it together to show the value for it. So you just don't do it. And so what happens? You start to get, I don't know, a little bit jaded of like, why am I going to learn any new techniques anyway? I'm not going to put it in my practice. I'm not going to be able to. Patients aren't going to want it. I can't charge for it. Why am I going to go pay a couple $1,000s for a seminar and take my time and my energy when, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Well, my opinion is it is broke. If you don't have multiple objective findings, and if you're not the authority in your area, in your community, where everyone seeks you out and says, yeah, I'm looking for a different approach. I heard about you. I heard that what you do is A, B, and C. You actually dig deeper. You get better results. I'm not saying a one-on-one, spend an hour with a patient, see 6 to 8 patients a day. That's not the type of practice that I'm promoting. That's not how I practice, okay? I would go crazy if I practiced like that. We still see a moderate amount of patients. On a busy day shift, we might see 50 patient visits. If you contrast that with how I used to practice back in the day, I think my busiest day was 110 patient visits in a day. And that's where, someone has a question about the pinching in the front of their hip. Sorry, Mrs. Jones, I don't have time to explain anything to you, so I'm just going to be like rattling something off that, and I worked on your low back and that should help it, and I'll see you later. If it doesn't help, come on back. And the person's out the door, and chances are you're not helping them because they have pinching in the front of their hip. Why? They have overactive hip flexors and weak glutes and maybe posterior tilt on their pelvis, a decreased sacral base angle, weak posterior chain, all, maybe set up because they had a bad fifth lumbar subluxation, but the sequence of events led up to a lot of dysfunction that affects their movement, their posture, and you don't have time to address that in a 30-second passing conversation, nor do you have any resources to give to that person to do anything about it to help fix it, okay? So now, fast forward to how it is now, because the whole title of this was, has anyone practiced like this before? Maybe practicing like it currently. Don't have to raise your hand, but just listen up. here's the solution to this. And this is what I figured out, okay? And I feel like this is really a great solution. It works very, very well. Is what if you had all these resources for your patient? You had some staff that was highly trained, that knew how to do the things that maybe it's not the best use of your time to do, because your best use of time is to put together a clinical plan for a patient and adjust patients and talk to patients and help lead them, right? Your staff can help with some of the mechanics, maybe a movement assessment, maybe teaching an exercise, right? Maybe that's something staff can do. You don't necessarily have to do that unless you want to, and you can. Sometimes it's fun to do that periodically too, just for a change of pace. But just hear me out. Let's say that you don't want to do that, okay? For the first several years, I did all the functional movement stuff in practice. I did none of it myself. I taught my staff to do it. I had appropriate staff to do it. I was highly trained, and I oversaw it all. I made sure it was being done right. So here's the deal. What if you had these systems in place where you were confident that you could deliver something that your patients really got a ton of value out of, that helped them a ton clinically, that your staff was extremely well trained and they could carry it out, and then instead of it taking you time and your staff all this time to maybe go through and show something that's so redundant, you had automated systems to be able to dial in and plug that patient into something to say, hey, tell you what, Mrs. Jones, that question you have about your hip, what I'm going to do is send you over to our exercise department. I'm going to have, Mary back there show you X, Y, and Z. Take about 15 minutes, all right? Just go ahead and talk to you about how that works. And then what we'll do is, on your next visit, do a movement assessment. Dig a little deeper, find out why that problem's there, so we don't just give you something short-term that's just going to maybe cover up a symptom, but then the problem's going to still be there. It's going to come right back. You'd probably want us to dig a little deeper and figure that out, right? Does that sound good? Okay, good. So that's what we'll do. So today, Mary's going to show you this protocol. She's going to give you access to a website that has some protocols, some exercises, some things you can do in the meantime. Get on back in here in 2 days or tomorrow. We're going to go through a movement assessment. After the movement assessment, I'll sit down with you. I'll review the findings of that movement assessment, and then I'll explain, if we find something, how that relates to what's going on with what I already know about you right now, as far as the quality of your spine segmentally, like which problem areas I've been working on for the last several months since I've been taking care of you, how that relates back to your posture, and then maybe it's time that we dig a little deeper and stop just seeing you once a month for an adjustment, but maybe see if there's something else we can do to help you take control of this, and then lay out a program for you to follow at home after we teach this to you in office. How's that sound? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. That's perfect. Okay, great. And then what do? You send them back over there, they do a protocol, they do a movement assessment, you follow up with them, you go through with it. Based on the findings, you put together a plan. It's very easy to program out the protocols that's going to be appropriate for that person's said problem. Protocols that actually work and fix them, not just something generic to waste their time, which is so unsatisfying to have a generic, gimmicky type of treatment plan. Oh my gosh, it drives me crazy. So then, from there, the patient goes through this well thought out game plan. They have resources at home. You completely over deliver. The value that you're giving them is so much higher than what you're charging them for, because yes, you're charging them for this extra service, and you are profitable on what you're charging them, as you should be. You've put the time and energy into doing this. You're delivering a very valuable service to your patient. You're doing it better than any other practitioner is going to do it out there, whether they go to a personal trainer or a physical therapist or whatever. You're going to have a more robust program, and there's going to be one cook in the kitchen, you. Instead of rolling the dice, sending them somewhere else, and having the physical therapist show them a hip flexor stretch and then say, you don't need to go back to the chiropractor. As a matter of fact, I think when the chiropractor adjusts you, he's hurting you, or something crazy like that. This is the stuff I've heard over the years. It's some of the motivation that's made me want to do this all under one roof and take it in-house and take back control over our patient who trusts us and wants us to guide them, because not because we're trying to take control of them in a bad way, but because the patient needs better clinical management instead of having multiple cooks in the kitchen, right? So I know this went full circle, but it starts with, if you're used to practicing a certain way and you've practiced a certain way that's been unrewarding, very simple, because maybe someone told you, yeah, keep it simple. Patients don't have a lot of time. They want to be in and out. They're not going to want to hang out in your practice for more than, 10 minutes, all right, which is not true. If there's value, patients want to be in your clinic. They want to be around you. They want to get the solutions that you're putting together for them, okay? We do it all day long. And a lot of chiropractors are in awe when we tell them that the majority of our patients are in our practice for at least 45 minutes for a visit, some of them upwards of 90 minutes. But, and I know that might sound scary to someone, how am I going to do that? I don't have the space, I don't have the personnel, I don't have the staff. There's solutions no matter how your setup is, I promise you that. In our clinic, we see I think a good amount of volume per week as far as patient visits. We don't have an extremely large staff. We have great systems in place that allow it to happen. We deliver an excellent form of care to our patients, which I would argue is better than any chiropractor in this entire state. And I'm not saying that to sound cocky, and if you're another chiropractor watching this in our state, come by, see what we do, and let me know if you think that I'm blowing hot air, because I'm telling you, I'm not. I'm not saying this to sound egotistical or sound like a jerk. I just know what we put into our care, and I know it is superior. And the cool thing is, I know that what we've done is we've been able to duplicate this so other chiropractors can do it as well. And I know saying that you're superior or doing something is like a big no-no. You're not supposed to say that unless you can back it up or whatever. I think our results speak for themselves. I think the resources we give a patient are more in-depth, more robust than what any other doctor is doing. I'm not just talking about other chiropractors. I'm talking about chiropractors, physical therapists, personal trainers, medical doctors, osteopaths, whatever, okay? Someone comes in with a spinal issue that is non-surgical or a movement-based issue, I feel like we can tackle it and we deliver more for the patient, 99% of the time. So just imagine for a second that everything I'm saying is 100% factual, and I'm not just sounding, like I'm very certain of myself, and I'm saying this from like ego, but imagine that this is all factual. Now imagine you could say the same thing in your community. And mind you, this isn't something I go out and I brag to other chiropractors about in our community. I mean, I'm not trying to, cause any problems or hurt any feelings out there. I'm talking to you chiropractor, who's followed us for some time, who's watching this live or listening to it on a replay or hearing on a podcast. And I just want to say, why did you get into chiropractic? Did you want to be the best? Did you want to have the best results for your patient? Or did you want to get burned out and figure out what kind of like neuropathy blanket to put on someone's feet for their, foot tingling? I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're up against in chiropractic right now. Instead of working under our licensure and under our umbrella and our philosophy of segment, posture, movement, improving movement, health from the inside, instead of all these outside sources, people are going towards medical integration. They're figuring out what kind of gimmicky gadget they can buy and try to sell to a patient, like whatever's hot this week. Here's the cool thing. Going after a movement-based approach, speaking the universal language of movement, that will never go away. That will never get old, because that is a truth. That is something that is going to exist until the end of time, is that movement is health. Patients understand this. It's life, and it's completely congruent with what we do as chiropractors. So my rant is over. If you've watched this on video, you can see I just drove home from the gym and now I'm home sitting in my driveway. So over and out. If you found this helpful, please comment, share this, send this to a chiropractor that you feel like maybe needs to hear this. If you're in a practice and you're, an associate doctor or an intern or the owner or whatever, forward it to all the other chiropractors in your office and say, hey, what do you think about this? You think this guy's like full of crap, or you think it's for real? And then reach out to us. What I'll do is put in the comment section, I'll put in a link here, how to schedule a demo with us. You can get on and you can jump on with some of our support staff. We can show you a demo. We can see if this is something that would work in your chiropractic practice, answer some questions for you. It might not. You might not be a good fit for us. We might not be a good fit for you, but the majority of the objections, the hurdles, or the perceived things that are stopping you from going more in depth in your practice, a lot of times it's in your head, and it's the same thing that was in my head, and I overcame it, and I built systems to get around it, and now I can never imagine practicing any differently. So anyway, appreciate all of you for your support, for watching us, for hanging out. Thank you for not being mediocre. Thank you for caring about your patients and our profession, and we'll talk with you soon. So over and out. Shoot us a comment, questions. We're here for you.